Hi everybody, welcome to the Team AkzoNobel team base here in Editie, Brazil. We're just about to start the 8th leg of the race. The crew arrived here after a pretty tortuous leg from New Zealand on leg 7. It was tough, it was through the Southern Ocean, it was pretty extreme. Sailors have been away, they've had some time to recuperate, shore crew have worked on the boat, and we thought this was a good time to try and catch up on the SAP Leonardo Biometric Edge project, which is led by Ryan. I've also got with us Luke Malloy, one of our helmsmen and trimmers, and Brad Frand, our bowman. So let's just, for people who don't know, let's just talk about Ryan. Let's talk through the project itself. What is it in a nutshell?
In short, we've partnered with Team AkzoNobel and SAP to try to collect the sailors' biodata while they're offshore. So it's a world we've never actually been able to see into before. We've had guesstimates, ideas, but never gotten the hard data where you can actually then see trends that you wouldn't get. And the ultimate goal is to help find small ways that we can take that data and help them tweak life on board to increase performance. And in this race, if we can get a 1% gain out of somehow getting more calories, sleeping differently, subtle things like that, it's a big game changer because the fleet's so tight.
And it is a tight fleet, and it's a one design fleet,
right.
and that's the important thing. That's why these incremental gains are very important. So for you guys, Luke, let's start with you. For a sailor on the boat, what does this actually mean to you in real life?
Well, this means to us in real life terms is that we can get the best out of ourselves, because that's the most unknown part. You know, we know the boat really well, we know the materials really well, the sails, we know how to sail at 100% most of the time. The problem that really gets in the way is when we all get tired and worn out, then we can only sail the boat at 95% or 94%. And so getting the most out of ourselves is the biggest unknown that we have in offshore sailing.
So Brad, how are we gathering this data? Have we got you guys wired up with electrodes and all that sort of stuff when you're offshore? Doesn't sound very likely.
No, we tried that to begin with. We had heart rate monitors on our chest, and they had 3D motion sensors in them and everything, and we've been through a few different processes, but we ended up with just a simple Garmin watch, and that measures our heart rate, and it can kind of measure a few other things as well, and it's got the motion sensor in that, so it tells us quite accurately when we're moving, when we're sleeping, when we're having a higher heart rate, and what our calorie count is. So that's really worked out well.
Can you show that to the camera?
Yeah.
So that's just a kind of normal looking watch, yep. Ryan, but there's
so on the back of it there's an optical heart rate sensor, which just measures your pulse and heart rate through your skin, and from that we can actually, if we cut to the next one, one more, we can monitor their heart rates throughout the whole day. They're waking. SAP has done a great job and written a bunch of custom apps for the device, which then takes the data when they're on deck, stores it, and then when they go down below, we have an auto sync process with a box on board. And one of the biggest things about the race is we can't have any data leaving or coming to the yacht that's not certified from Volvo. And so all this analysis and interpretation has to be done on board in a closed environment for the sailors. When they get to shore, yeah, we can download everything, look at the boat data, look at the heart rate, but to make it actually actionable and usable, it has to be done on board. So we collect the heart rate data. When they come down below, this kicks into the computer. We have a small Raspberry Pi on board with
Raspberry
IoT.
Pi.
I'm learning a lot of new tech as well. It's a small little computer, and SAP's put a lot of their proprietary software on there, so the IoT, Leonardo, things like that, and then they've written a lot of custom analysis that we can put the data into, and we get a nice user interface where the guys can see their data, and then they can make changes that they want to based on it.
Luke, can you talk about how this data might be used, how it might be applied in the real world? We're still in a kind of in a development mode with this project. We're still learning how to make the devices work and how to gather the data. But how might we make this work in the future? What decisions could we make differently?
Well, I think one of the biggest things at this stage is we're seeing how much sleep we're actually getting in our off watches, and also seeing how many calories we're consuming, and that's all related, and see how that's related, which is quite interesting. But moving forward, we can use this tool to potentially make decisions on strategy and tactics, and how many maneuvers we would do on board, or how many we have done in the past, and just correlating all that info and seeing how the crew are feeling. You know, it can come back to one nice little app on the iPad, and you can see the general, energy levels of the crew, and whether you can, it's worthwhile to do another 15 or 20 tacks in the next 2 hours, or whether we need to take a bit of time and and you know, stay in one direction a little bit longer to get a bit more rest. And I think that's quite handy, especially in the shorter legs coming up towards the finish, where there will be a lot of short coastal racing and not so much, you know, Southern Ocean blasting for sort of 6 or 7 hours in one go.
Because you've got to remember, this is a marathon of a race, isn't it? It's an 8-month race. It's 46,000 miles around the world. But you guys are racing non-stop for up to kind of 3 weeks at a time. When you're on board the boat yourselves, without this sort of these devices, how would you monitor, Brad? How would you monitor how you're feeling? Would you have previously just toughed it out?
Yeah, in the past, when you're on board, you're kind of in an environment where everybody has to keep on pushing, and you just push yourself until eventually you're going to break. But yeah, you can't really have a proper gauge on how much sleep you've had, how much you've been working, and really how much you should be kind of replenishing those calories that you've been burning. So when you've got hard data there, it's easy to see, well, all right, I need to eat 2 sets of freeze-dried and mouthwash rather than just the one. And so you take a little bit of time to eat, or maybe a little bit extra sleep, and then that's kind of how you can tailor it for yourself and manage that yourself on board.
And that's really what we're trying to do with this project, is not make massive changes or huge differences to life on board and saying, you know, Brad, you haven't slept very much today, go take an 8-hour nap. Like that's never going to happen in offshore life, but it's those little things of, can we get him to eat an extra freeze-dried, or can we find the optimal watch that he gets the most sleep in? And so he really protects that watch, and he gets as much sleep as he can in that one, and does both jobs the other one. So
yeah, and that is the other thing, is there's some guys on board that are overly worked, they do all the boat work, and sometimes you can see who that guy is and maybe say, you know, you don't have to do that boat work after you're off watch, you go straight to bed or just eat. Someone else will take over that, and just small kind of games like that is good.
Yeah, given a tool for the skipper, you know, because if you're on an off watch from somebody, you could potentially never really interface with them and see them. But given a tool for the skipper and then to look at and be able to look at their whole crew in a quick snapshot, see who's been running extra hard and kind of redlining, and maybe we should, you know, sit on for a minute, have them back off just a bit, so you can save it for the coming next bit.
What sort of trends have we seen in this data? I've seen information up on here about sleep patterns and energy levels and that sort of stuff, and heart rates. What trends have you seen?
Yeah, so this is actual data from leg 6, so going into Auckland. The top left one here is the calories per day, and then the bottom right is the sleep, or sorry, my bottom left is the sleep.
So this is showing 6,000 calories. Somebody's peaking at 6,000 calories.
And that's actually not the highest we've seen. If you looked at the Southern Ocean leg, Brad was running over 6,000, 6,500 easy on a day. He tagged around 8,500 in one of the days. It was massive.
Wow.
And so I'd say this would be near an average.
What would that compare to somebody in a normal day job?
Normal
maybe a
person day job, 2,500.
Wow, okay.
And the main thing too is, in a normal day job, you have a lunch break, you have breakfast, you have dinner. These guys on board, they have to balance eating and the time it takes to make a meal. I mean, what does it take on board? 30 minutes? Right? So you get off watch, so you're shortening how much sleep you can get in that off watch. Now it's 2 meals, now you got to double that. And that all plays into it.
And from your guys' perspective as sailors, have you seen yourself change your behaviour based on the sort of stuff you're beginning to learn from this? Because I know in the past people have said, you know, I've lost 8 kilograms, I didn't eat because I was too tired to eat and it was windy. Does this make you think more about how you manage yourselves and manage your bodies on the boat?
Certainly on our watch, Brad and I, the last couple of legs have been on watch together, and we definitely are more conscious of when we should be eating and how much, and quite pushing each other. Sometimes one of us doesn't feel like eating, and you just make a meal anyway and say, oh well, you know, almost force feeding in some respects. And I think that we're more conscious of, you know, eating now, because then in the 4 hours time or 3 hours time when you're back on deck, that's when you're going to be using that energy. And that's probably how we're using it the most so far. Also tailoring each individual food program based on, you know, how much calories people are actually needing. Because someone like Brad, like we just said, needs, you know, up to 8,000 calories a day, and someone like Emily or Martine needs a little bit less. So, you know, it's tailoring each individual's food, because then we take less food for certain people, and there's less weight on board, and it's all performance driven, which is all heading the right way for that 1% gain.
Luke, you're one of the helmsmen on the boat, and that's possibly one of the most demanding jobs, particularly when it's windy, from a mental point of view. It's pretty demanding physically as well. Is there anything that, Ryan, that this will bring out that shows you just how much stress these guys are under when they're steering in the middle of the night in 40 knots of breeze?
Yeah, so one of the things we're working on, and you have to generate a large data set to be able to actually find these small trend lines. What we're trying to see is, how does this affect boat driving? I mean, these guys are the best at what they do, but if you haven't slept in 30 hours, what's your performance going to be like? And are you off 2%? And we're not looking to say that maybe he shouldn't drive, but maybe after an hour, he starts to fatigue a bit mentally, and we swap a helmsman after an hour, and then he gets back on, and he still does his 2 to 4 hours each watch when he's driving, but just slightly changing how it is. And if we can gain a 1% gain, it's a 1% gain in polars and boat speed. That's huge over.
So Brad, can you see this in the future when this data is, is absolutely rock solid and collated, that when you go through the debriefs at the beginning or the end of a leg and the beginning of a leg, that you start to talk about this, as well as saying, this was the right sail choice and this was the right way we went, is also to talk about how you guys manage yourself on the boat.
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, in the past, the data hasn't been available. It's just kind of been able to, people themselves either taking it on, or people would say, you're looking tired, you have to deal with it. But when there's actually some hard data there that you can see that you're going to make a gain, you just rest a little bit more, you need to eat a little bit more, then I think it brings everybody kind of more aware, and I think it's definitely going to lead to performance gains.
It'll be very interesting to see this data across the whole fleet and be able to assess teams based on that kind of data. Ryan, just talk a little bit about the collaboration that's happened here, because this is pretty innovative stuff and pretty bleeding edge stuff. How's it all come together?
It's been really good. As Brad talked about earlier, I mean, it's definitely an innovation project. SAP's done a great job of learning this world and how many facets there are and how hard and demanding it is. I mean, one, the environment these guys are operating in on a day-to-day basis is extremely hard to operate and live in, let alone find a device that'll then work for them on board to wear 3 weeks at a time through all conditions and not be a hindrance. And how do we collect that data? How do we give that data back? So it's been a really big innovation of testing and learning, seeing what works, getting the input from the sailors and taking that, running it up to the tech, finding out what we can do and trying to give them a solution that actually works for them on board. And that's pretty much why we ended up on these risk-based wearables. It's a tool they can use and they're going to use it anyways, and so, but we can also gain great data from there. And then with that, we can take it into the UI and give them a return for a very small time cost for them, because they're so crunched on board that we're trying to find ways that we can do so much for them in the background to give them a big output for a very minimal input.
Fantastic. Well, we're in Itajaí. It's a few days away from the start of the leg. What does the data say about these guys? They look like they're in pretty good condition. Everybody looks relaxed and rested.
Yeah, I mean, the last leg was brutal. The calorie count's way up. The sleep was definitely down through a lot of it. But the guys have done a really good job of recovering, little home times, good food, rested, getting ready for it. It'll be really interesting to see this next leg, because we've got a fair bit of different conditions coming up. And then the Atlantic is going to be an interesting one as well, where it's just as hard as you can go.
Okay, well that seems like a pretty good place to try and wrap it up. Luke, Brad and Ryan, thanks so much for getting involved in this today. If you've got any questions about this, you can fire it into the SAP Facebook page or into the Team AkzoNobel Facebook page, and I'll pass them over to Ryan to answer. So for now, thanks very much from Brazil.